Smash that subscribe button before this story disappears into the dark, because what you're about to hear isn't just a prison story. It's a warning. Like the video if you think no system is truly unbreakable. And tell me in the comments, could anyone really escape a place designed to erase you? The sirens cut through the frozen Colorado night like a blade. It was 2:17 a.m. when the first alarm went off inside the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, ADX Florence. A place so secure, so controlled, that even the guards called it the end of the line. The kind of prison where silence wasn't just enforced, it was engineered. Inside Control Unit Range D, a motion sensor triggered in a cell that shouldn't have had movement. Not at that hour. Not under that level of surveillance. The red light pulsed once, then again. Then everything went dark. For exactly 3 seconds. And in ADX Florence, 3 seconds was an eternity. By the time backup power kicked in, correctional officers were already sprinting through steel corridors. Boots echoing off reinforced concrete. Radios crackled with overlapping commands. Unit D breach. Repeat possible breach. Lockdown initiated. Confirm inmate status, now. Every door sealed automatically. Every corridor choked shut. This wasn't a prison reacting. This was a machine closing its jaws. But something had already slipped through. Earlier that evening, Special Agent Daniel Reyes had been sitting in his car just outside the facility's outer perimeter. He wasn't supposed to be there. Not officially. ADX didn't like attention. It didn't like questions. And it definitely didn't like federal agents poking around without clearance. But Reyes had a reason. 3 weeks earlier, a man named Victor Halden had been transferred into ADX Florence under the highest possible classification. Officially, he was labeled a domestic terrorist, mastermind behind a string of coordinated financial cyberattacks that crippled infrastructure across 3 states. Unofficially, he was something else entirely. No prior criminal record. No known affiliations. No digital footprint before 5 years ago. It was as if Victor Halden had appeared out of nowhere, fully formed, already dangerous. And then there was the rumor. The one Reyes couldn't shake. Halden doesn't break systems, an informant had told him. He studies them until they break themselves. Reyes didn't believe in myths, but he did believe in patterns. And nothing about Halden's transfer made sense. Why send a non-violent cyber criminal to the most secure prison in America? Unless he wasn't as non-violent as they claimed. Inside ADX, Correctional Officer Lisa Monroe had just finished her final round. She paused outside cell D14, Victor Halden's cell. The man inside sat perfectly still on his concrete bed, hands resting on his knees, eyes fixed on the wall. Not moving, not blinking. He'd been like that for hours. Monroe had worked ADX for 6 years. She'd seen men lose their minds in these cells, screaming, clawing at the walls, begging for human contact. Halden wasn't like them. He didn't react. He observed. Even now Monroe felt it, the strange, crawling sensation that he wasn't just sitting there. He was watching her, studying her. She forced herself to follow protocol. No engagement, no conversation. But just as she turned to leave, Halden spoke, softly, calmly. Do you know what the most dangerous thing in this prison is? Monroe froze. Inmates weren't supposed to initiate conversation. She kept her back to him. No talking. A pause. Then, it's not the walls, Halden continued. It's the certainty, the belief that nothing can change. Monroe clenched her jaw and walked away. But she didn't realize that at that exact moment, something already had. The first anomaly showed up in the surveillance logs. A glitch. 3 seconds of missing footage across multiple camera feeds. At first, technicians assumed it was a routine system hiccup. ADX ran on layers of redundancy, backup systems for backup systems. Failures didn't just happen. But when they cross-checked the logs, the timestamps didn't match. The outage hadn't been random. It had been synchronized. Deliberate. Reyes got the call at 2:43 a.m. By 3:10, he was standing inside the outer security checkpoint, flashing credentials that were being questioned more than accepted. You don't have jurisdiction here, the warden said flatly. Reyes didn't blink. Then consider this a courtesy visit before it becomes a federal investigation. A tense silence hung in the air. Then, "Fine," the warden snapped. "But you stay out of my operation." Reyes nodded. He had no intention of doing that. They reached Unit D at 3:26 a.m. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Every cell door sealed. Every inmate accounted for. Except one. Cell D14. Victor Halden. The door was still locked. The observation slot still sealed. And yet, "Open it," Reyes said. The guard hesitated. "Protocol says." "Open it." Reluctantly, the guard keyed in the sequence. The heavy steel door slid open with a low, mechanical groan. And for a moment no one moved. The cell was empty. No broken bars. No damaged walls. No signs of forced entry. Just a neatly folded blanket on the bed. And something else. Something that made Reyes step forward slowly, his pulse tightening in his chest. On the concrete floor, scratched deep into the surface with something sharp, were 3 words. Systems always fail. The room fell silent. The kind of silence that doesn't just fill space, it consumes it. The warden's voice came out strained. "That's not possible." Reyes didn't answer, because his eyes had already moved to the back wall, to something no one else had noticed yet. A barely visible seam, perfectly aligned with the concrete. Too clean, too precise. He crouched down, running his fingers along it. And then he felt it. A faint draft of cold air coming from inside the wall. Reyes stood slowly. His voice was quiet now. Controlled. "Get me engineering. Now." Because if what he was thinking was true, then Victor Halden hadn't just escaped ADX Florence. He had found something hidden inside it. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. And whatever it was, it had been waiting. But when they finally forced that wall open, what they found inside would prove one thing beyond any doubt. ADX Florence hadn't been designed to keep people in. It had been hiding something far more dangerous. And Victor Halden had just unlocked it. The first thing they noticed wasn't what was inside the wall. It was the air. Cold. Stale. Untouched. Like it hadn't moved in years. Maybe decades. The maintenance crew hesitated as the concrete panel was pried loose, the sound grinding through the silence of Unit D. Dust drifted down in slow, choking clouds as the slab gave way, revealing a narrow passage behind it, just wide enough for a man to squeeze through sideways. No one spoke. Not the guards. Not the warden. Not even Reyes. Because this wasn't part of ADX's design. "Blueprints," Reyes said finally, his voice tight. "I want original construction schematics. Not the public ones." The warden didn't respond immediately. And that hesitation said everything. The tunnel stretched into darkness, lined with raw concrete and reinforced steel supports that didn't match the rest of the prison structure. It wasn't crude. It wasn't improvised. It was intentional, deliberate. Someone had built this, and then erased it. Reyes stepped inside first, ignoring the protest behind him. A flashlight beam cut through the black, illuminating dust patterns on the ground. Footprints. Fresh. Heading deeper in. "Halden didn't just find this," Reyes muttered. He knew it was here. Behind him, Officer Monroe felt her stomach tighten. "That's impossible. No inmate has access to structural layouts." Reyes didn't turn around. Then he didn't get them from inside. They moved slowly through the passage, every step echoing in the tight space. The air grew colder the deeper they went, and something else crept in, a faint metallic smell. Not rust. Something sharper. More recent. After about 30 yards, the tunnel opened into a small chamber. And that's where everything changed. There were lights. Dim, flickering strips embedded into the ceiling. Powered. Active. "This isn't abandoned," Monroe whispered. Reyes didn't answer, because he was staring at the walls. They weren't bare. They were covered. Names. Dozens of them. Carved, etched, scratched into the concrete in different styles, different depths, different ages. Some looked fresh. Others ancient. "Who are they?" Monroe asked, her voice barely audible. Reyes stepped closer, scanning the markings. Some names were followed by dates. Others had only numbers. But one thing stood out immediately. None of those names were in the ADX inmate registry. Not past. Not present. This isn't a tunnel, Reyes said slowly. It's a record. Back at Central Command, panic was starting to bleed through the professionalism. The system audit was escalating. The 3-second blackout? It wasn't just cameras. Door logs had glitched. Internal sensors had reset. Even the biometric tracking system, the one that monitored inmate movement through heat signatures, had gone blind. For exactly 3 seconds. Someone accessed the core system, a technician said, fingers flying across the keyboard. But there's no login record. That's not possible, the warden snapped. It's not just possible, the technician replied. It happened. Reyes' radio crackled. Agent Reyes, we've got a problem. He pressed the receiver. Define problem. System breach. Internal. Someone manipulated the facility grid during the blackout. Reyes' grip tightened. His eyes drifted back to the carved names, to the chamber, to the lights that were still running. Yeah, he said quietly. I think I'm looking at it. At the far end of the chamber, there was another passage. But this one was different, cleaner, newer, and at its entrance a door. Not a prison door. Something else. Smooth steel. No visible hinges. No handle. Just a small panel beside it, faintly glowing. Monroe stepped back. That's not ours. That's not bureau design. Reyes approached slowly, studying it. No, he agreed. It's not. There was a symbol on the panel. Minimalist. 3 vertical lines intersected by a single horizontal stroke. Simple, but precise. Reyes felt something shift in his chest. Recognition. He had seen it before. Not here, but in a classified file buried deep in a case that had never officially existed. A case involving disappearances. People who vanished without records, without bodies, without explanation. And every one of those cases had one thing in common. That symbol. Give me access to this panel, Reyes said. Monroe shook her head immediately. We don't even know what it is. Exactly. That's not a reason to open it. Reyes turned to her, his expression hardening. If Halden went through that door, then whatever's on the other side is already in play. A beat. Then Monroe exhaled slowly. Fine. But if this goes sideways? It already has. Back in the control room, something else triggered. An alert no one had seen before. Not in training. Not in any system manual. Restricted sector access, level black. The technician froze. What is that? The warden stepped closer. There is no level black. But the system disagreed. Because somewhere inside ADX Florence, a door had just been opened. In the chamber, the panel flickered as Reyes worked. The interface wasn't standard. It didn't respond like any system he'd used before. But Halden had opened it, which meant there was a way. Think, Reyes murmured. If you were him. He looked back at the wall of names, at the pattern, at the repetition, and then he saw it. Certain names had markings beside them. 3 lines, intersected by 1. The same symbol. It's not a keycard, Reyes said. It's a sequence. He stepped forward and pressed the panel, once, twice, 3 times, then paused and pressed it again across the horizontal axis. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a low hum vibrated through the chamber. The door unlocked. What lay beyond wasn't another tunnel. It was a corridor. Bright. Sterile. Nothing like the prison above. The walls were lined with reinforced glass rooms, each one empty. Or, at least, they looked empty at first, until Monroe stepped closer to one of the panels and saw the restraints, built into the floor, into the walls, into the ceiling. Her breath caught. This isn't containment, she whispered. It's experimentation. Reyes moved further down the corridor, his pulse now steady, controlled, but faster than before. At the far end, there was another room, larger, different, and inside it, a chair, surrounded by equipment, screens still flickering, active, alive. Someone was using this recently, Reyes said. Monroe's voice shook. For what? Reyes didn't answer. Because he had just seen the screen, and what was on it made his blood run cold. A live feed from inside ADX from multiple cells, including cell D14, Victor Halden's cell, empty, but not abandoned, because on the screen, sitting calmly on the concrete bed, was Victor Halden, watching them, smiling. Monroe stumbled back. That's impossible, he's not there. Reyes stepped closer to the monitor, his mind racing. Not a recording, not a loop, live, real time, which meant he didn't escape, Reyes said slowly. The realization hit like a gunshot. He moved. The screen flickered, and Halden leaned closer, as if he could see them, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. Then he spoke, not through the speakers, but through the system itself. His voice echoed through the corridor. Calm, controlled, certain. You finally found it. Reyes' jaw tightened. Where are you? A slight tilt of Halden's head. A hint of amusement. You're asking the wrong question. A pause. Then, try asking what this place really is. Behind them, the door they had entered through slammed shut. Hard. Sealed. Locking them in. Monroe spun around. No. Reyes didn't move, because he was still staring at the screen. At Halden. At the man who hadn't escaped the most secure prison in America, but had somehow taken control of something hidden beneath it. And then Halden said something that changed everything. Something that made it clear this wasn't just a prison breach. This was something much bigger, much older, and far more dangerous. This facility, Halden said quietly, was never built to hold inmates. A beat. Then he smiled. It was built to disappear them. And just as the lights flickered again, every screen in the corridor went black, leaving Reyes and Monroe trapped in the dark, with no idea what was coming next. Darkness swallowed the corridor whole. For a moment, there was nothing. No hum of electricity, no flicker of failing lights, not even the distant echo of the prison above. Just silence, the kind that presses against your ears until your own heartbeat feels too loud. Monroe's breathing broke first. Sharp. Uneven. We need to get out. Now. Reyes didn't answer. Because, in the dark, he was listening. Counting. 1, 2, 3. And then it came back. Not the lights. The system. A low mechanical pulse rippled through the walls, like something deep beneath them had just woken up. Emergency lighting snapped on, dim red strips along the floor, casting long shadows that twisted across the glass chambers. But something had changed. The rooms weren't empty anymore. Monroe stepped back, her voice catching in her throat. Reyes, tell me you see that. He did. Inside the nearest chamber, the restraints were no longer still. They were engaged, locked into position, as if they were holding someone down. But there was no one visible, just the shape, an impression, like pressure against air. Reyes forced himself forward, eyes narrowing. This is projection or some kind of... The glass fogged. From the inside, a slow, spreading haze that formed around an invisible figure. Then, a handprint, pressed outward. Monroe staggered back. No, that's not possible. Reyes didn't respond, because he was remembering the files, the disappearances, people taken without record, not killed, not processed, removed. What if they were never gone? He said quietly. Monroe shook her head. You're saying they were brought here? For what? Reyes turned toward the central room, the one with the chair, the screens, the system that Halden had accessed. For control. The main console flickered back to life. Not fully. Just one screen. And, on it, Victor Halden. No longer sitting in his cell. Now standing. Somewhere else. A room Reyes didn't recognize. Clean. Open. Free. Halden adjusted his sleeves calmly, like a man preparing to leave an office rather than someone at the center of a maximum security breach. You're starting to understand, he said. Reyes stepped closer. You planned this. Halden smiled faintly. No. I discovered it. Big difference. People disappeared, Reyes snapped. You're telling me you just stumbled into that? Halden's expression didn't change. They didn't disappear. They were reassigned. Monroe's voice rose. That's not a system. That's abuse. That's architecture, Halden corrected. A hidden layer built into a facility designed for isolation. No witnesses. No oversight. Perfect conditions. Reyes' jaw tightened. For what? Halden paused. Then he said it. Behavioral rewriting. The words landed heavy. Real. Dangerous. Reyes' mind raced, connecting fragments. The missing people. The erased records. The hidden chamber beneath the most secure prison in America. They were experimenting on inmates, Reyes said. Psychological conditioning. Sensory control. Not just inmates, Halden interrupted. A beat. Then, anyone they needed to remove without consequence. Monroe's face went pale. That's not possible. There would be oversight audits. Halden laughed softly. From who? The silence answered for her. Reyes leaned closer to the screen. So what, you exposed it? That's your endgame. Halden's smile faded slightly. You still don't get it. The lights flickered again. And behind Reyes, something moved. Not in the chambers. Behind them. In the corridor. A shadow shifting where nothing should have been. Reyes turned slowly. The red emergency glow stretched down the hallway. But at the far end, something blocked the light. A figure. Standing still. Monroe's voice dropped to a whisper. That's not. There's no one authorized down here. The figure stepped forward. Slow. Unsteady. And as it entered the light, Reyes felt his chest tighten. The uniform. Correctional officer. Name tag barely visible. Graham. Monroe gasped. He's been missing for 2 years. Graham's eyes were open, but unfocused. His movements stiff, unnatural, like someone walking through a memory instead of reality. Graham. Monroe called, her voice trembling. Can you hear me? He didn't respond. He just kept walking. Toward them. Reyes' voice hardened. Halden, what did you do? Nothing, Halden replied. He was already part of the system. Graham stopped a few feet away. His head tilted slightly. Then he spoke. But the voice wasn't fully his. Flat. Detached. Subject responsive. External stimuli detected. Monroe staggered back. No, that's not him. Reyes stepped in front of her. Stay behind me. Halden's voice returned. Quieter now. Once you see the system, you can't unsee it. Reyes' grip tightened. You didn't expose this. You activated it. A pause. Then, yes. The word echoed like a gunshot. All those people, Reyes said, his voice low. You turned them into what? Tools. Proof, Halden corrected. Proof that the system works. The figure of Graham took another step forward. Closer now. Too close. Monroe's breathing turned frantic. We need to get out. We need to go now. There is no out, Halden said calmly. Behind them, the sealed door hissed. Unlocked. But it didn't open. It waited. Reyes made a decision. Fast. Hard. He grabbed Monroe's arm. Move. They backed toward the exit, keeping their eyes on Graham as he advanced slowly, mechanically. Step by step. Subject attempting retreat, Graham said. Intervention required. Reyes didn't wait. He shoved Monroe through the doorway the second it slid open. They ran. The tunnel felt tighter now. Longer. The air heavier. Behind them, footsteps echoed. Not fast. Not chasing. Just following. Relentless. They burst back into cell D14. The empty cell. The scratched message still carved into the floor. Systems always fail. Except now, it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a promise. Alarms blared again. Louder. Wider. Across the entire facility. Guards shouted over radios. Lockdowns triggered. But Reyes knew. This wasn't a breach anymore. It was a takeover. Back in Central Command, the screens flickered wildly. Feeds looping. Switching. Breaking. Until finally, every monitor showed the same thing. Victor Halden. Standing outside. Beyond the perimeter fence. Free. Reyes pushed through the chaos, grabbing the nearest terminal. Track him, he barked. Now. The technician shook his head, panicked. We can't. He's not in the system anymore. Reyes froze. Not in the system. Just like that. Gone. Outside, the Colorado wind cut across the empty road as Halden walked calmly into the darkness. No guards. No sirens. No resistance. Because, to the system, he no longer existed. Back inside ADX Florence, deep beneath the prison, the hidden corridor lights flickered once more, then stabilized. The chambers remained active, occupied, watching, waiting. And in cell D14, hours later, after the lockdown had ended and the reports had begun, a new inmate was escorted in. High security. No name released. No record accessible. The door slammed shut. The lights dimmed. And slowly, the inmate turned toward the wall. Then smiled. Because far beyond the walls of ADX, the system hadn't been destroyed. It had been released. And somewhere, in a place no one was supposed to find, a new name was being carved into concrete, waiting for the next person who thought a prison was just a place you escape from. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for what comes next.